This is E.T., and this here is Charles A. Sampson. Sampson was one of the early charlatans among strongmen performing in the 19th century circuses and early 20th century vaudeville stages. Sampson's history provides an example of why we today should doubt all the early strength claims, in particular for so-called feats prior to the establishment of reputable federations, such as the AAU and IOC, the International Olympic Committee. While there are reasons to question records in, let's say pole vaulting, with those flexible fiberglass poles, or let's say the bench press that's performed by lifters wrapped up in super tight canvas lifting suits. Nonetheless, these are legitimate athletic feats, albeit assisted ones. But men such as Charles Sampson simply lied regarding their strength lifts. Keep in mind that this story occurs during the age of circus impresarios P.T. Barnum, whose reputed and most famous quote of the era was this: "There's a sucker born every minute." Charles Sampson. He was born in France, I think it was 1859, would move to the U.S. to Detroit, Michigan. He had a good physique, as you can see, but he was not as strong as he claimed. He said, this is his story, that his preternatural strength came to him after he was struck by lightning. He was age 14 at the time. Then, after 6 months' recovery, he writes, he was blessed with near superhuman power. Now, to give you an idea of how crazy it was, one of his claims was this: he could lift overhead a 2,240-pound barbell. That is 1 imperial ton or 1,016 kilos. The huge metal balls at the end of the bar rested on 2 enormous barrels. Now, audience members were invited to come on stage and try to lift it. None, of course, could even budget. Then Sampson's manager would come out. He droned on about the difficulty of doing this kind of lift. Then there was the drum roll, and Sampson would come on under the bar. He grabs it at chest height like he's about to do a standing press. He would grunt and fuss and then slowly press the weight upward to arm's length above his head. Keep in mind this: Paul Anderson, who unassisted by anabolics, was arguably the strongest man ever known since the biblical Sampson, during the 1950s, set a world record clean and press of 435 pounds. That is 97 kilos, far less than that the fake Sampson claimed to lift. After one exhibition, though, a man slipped from the audience on stage after Sampson had completed his lift, and he found the weight to be, far less than any 2,000 pounds. Here's the story behind that. During the time Sampson's manager droned on with his speech about the difficulty of Sampson's lift, holes were opened somehow on the balls that rested on the barrels, and sand that was within those balls drained from the balls and into openings in the barrels. I should add here, much later on, Bob Hoffman, owner of the York Barbell Company, coach for the U.S. Olympic weightlifting team, would himself stage lifting feats. He'd use his company's barbells, but he had plates made that had weight less than that stamped on them. Well, now exposed, Sampson went on elsewhere with a new stunt. This was a harness lift of an elephant. Now you can see here an example when he performed the same lift using horses. while Sampson stood on a scaffolding. It's above the large wooden platform that held the elephant. While in harness, with chains attached to the platform below containing the elephant, using mostly leg and back, Sampson appeared to lift the beast. It would be about 6-7 inches. That would be, 15 to 18 centimeters. Then he slowly let the elephant down. Then he would theatrically collapse in exhaustion to the wild applause from the audience. But one night, Sampson went through the routine. He feigned to collapse after slowly dropping his body, and of course assuming the elephant had dropped. But whatever jack or other lifting mechanism that had actually lifted the animal from below, well, it failed, and the elephant remained above the ground. The charade was again exposed. The only thing Sampson had lifted, well, was himself. Eventually, Sampson did engage in a genuine strength contest, this time against the famed Eugene Sandow, who obviously proved to be the strongest. This episode is a story deserving its own video. After issuing a challenge for anyone to duplicate his strength feats, Sampson attempted to lock Sandow out of the theater, which, by the way, was filled with 10,000 people, including the Marquis of Queensberry. Sandow had to break the door down so the contest could begin. Now, what they did was break chains with their chest and biceps, and both did that. Although I should add here, Sampson tried to cheat. Then, when Sandow grabbed and then lifted a 280-pound dumbbell, it was all over. He did it with one arm. Sampson was forced to leave the stage. He said, "I've had enough of this. This is all humbug." That left Sandow to a screaming ovation from the crowd. Despite the negative publicity, Sampson continued his act for several more years, continuing to proclaim himself still the strongest on earth. And that's the story. Put your comments below if you would. Hit the like button. That will get YouTube to make these videos more available. You see the bell icon. You tap that. You'll be notified of new uploads. And if you have not subscribed, do it. Thank you.